Do either of you want to share your screen? Should I give you co-host stuff so that you can do that?
That would be great. Thank you.
Yeah, let me do that right.
I don't need it, but
I'm gonna make Abby co-host, and then that way she'll be able to share her screen. And you don't need to, Ken?
no.
Okay, great. So, oh, it's actually 12 o'clock. Darn. We're moving right along. All right. Currently, in addition to us, Linda's on the call, and we also have Ariane Sani, who's also part of Global Movement. Ariane, why don't you kick off introductions with who you are? This is not only for us, but this is also for the recording that will be shared with other people. I'm going to ask everybody to do a quick introduction so we can keep to schedule.
Okay, I'll go really
these sessions are recorded and archived so people can watch the whole session anytime they want to.
Okay.
Go ahead, James.
Ariane?
Want to lead?
Okay, so I'm Ariane Sani. I'm a Fordham alum. I was assistant dean, and now I've gone independent, working primarily with students. And I work, I'm happy to be part of Global Movement, and also I'm a managing director at EMA, and I work with a program at NYU. So I'm expanding and happy to be here. Thank you.
And Ariane on Global Movement also really spearheads a lot of the arts and culture segment of what we've been working on, which includes music and theater and activism and events and things like that. So she's an integral part of this, the thinking behind this. Abby, do you want to say hello?
Sure. Well, thank you so much for having me. I'm Abby Schneider. I'm an associate professor of marketing at Regis University in Denver, Colorado. I'm also the incoming director of the SEED Institute. It's the Sustainable Economic and Enterprise Institute. So starting Earth Day, April 22nd of 2022, I will be in that new role, and I'm very excited about that. I met Jim a few years ago and got involved with Global Movement, but then got really busy, had a kid. So I've been absent for a little while, but I'm really excited to be back. So thanks for having me.
It's great to have you. It's lovely, and I can't wait to hear what you want to share a little bit later. Linda, why don't you give us a shout?
Hi there, I'm Linda Irwin, formerly affiliate faculty at Regis University, and now retired, and a Global Movement groupie. Areas that I'm interested in are, or that I've worked in, strategy, marketing, and entrepreneurship.
I would say you're much more than just a groupie, although I appreciate the idea. I know you're a groupie of Jim Stoner, but
Aren't we all?
but you've also really been integral in leading strategy on curriculum change, and really doubling us down. One of the things I remember from an early conversation with you was you hounded us with the term of urgent and necessary until it no longer was marketing and was just built into what we do. So that is you're our chief strategist, I would call you.
Thank you, I'll take it.
Jim Stoner, why don't you say hello?
Yeah, I'm Jim Stoner. I'm supposedly retired. And the great thing about being retired is now I have time to do some real work. And I last week I reported that the high point of my week was this team meeting. And that's almost always the case. So I'm just delighted to be working with you all. It's so much fun. That's all.
Well, and I would love it. Just give us 2 seconds about Global Movement. Really sort of did come out of your thinking. It grew out of the MacArthur grant application that you did. Just give us a minute or two on that, and on where that we're now all walking down this path with you, but it was something that grew out of work you were working on.
Well, the Jesuit International Association of Jesuit Business Schools in 2009 committed 10 years of its annual conference to sustainability. From the conference, the idea came out a couple of years later of creating the Journal of Management for Global Sustainability. And a few years after that, if I can get people around here to be quiet. There's something about an open house. By the way, all I'm dressed with is my pajama bottoms and my shirt, which I can get away with because it's Zoom. Eventually, in 2016, that process has evolved into an application to the MacArthur Foundation, $100 million competition for to bring about change. And that was the International Association of Jesuit Business Schools and the colleagues in Jesuit Business Education put that together. In 2019, they didn't participate, but another application went into that really became, I think, the start of globalmovement.net. Of course, Morgane Fritz and James Weichert were the key people, I think, that caused that application to be able to go in 2019. And we're going to put one in 2022. And there's a lot of story behind that, but basically it's a structure. It's a structure for trying to do what we want to do and to be public about what we want to do. And it's a good structure. And we hope that eventually MacArthur Foundation will decide it's more important to save the planet than to worry about children in refugees camps and stuff like that, as valuable as that is. But if we don't save the planet, there's no refugee camps to worry about. So is that okay, James?
That's great. I'm going to do just a quick one for myself, which is my name's James Weichert. I'm the project manager of globalmovement.net. And this project happened in that I reached out to Professor Stoner, who was one of the key professors in my MBA program at Fordham, and said, I'm interested in doing a PhD. How do I go about doing that? And he said, well, I have a great project. So we started working on this, and all good things from that will come. So I appreciate being able to be a part of this with you, and I've learned a ton by being a part of it. Ken Sagendorf, the reason I left you for last is I'm going to ask you to introduce yourself and then just kick it off. So if that's okay, I'll pass it over to you.
Sounds great. Thanks, James. Good morning, everyone. My name is Ken Sagendorf. I am a professor and founding director of our Innovation Center in the Anderson College of Business and Computing at Regis University, as well as the director of our MBA program. I got involved in global movement at the beginnings of when our business school started in 2015. And James was coming around our campus to talk about that first MacArthur grant possibility. We built a business college based on a stewardship vision. And that's why many of us are here in this business college. And Global Movement was an expansion of that work around stewardship to work on everything, really, to metamorphosize business education. So that's I've been involved on the periphery of Global Movement since its start. Linda keeps me in touch, and I pop in and out when I can to the amazing work you all are doing. So thanks for having me this morning. I'll kick off here this morning, and really some context is necessary. So Abby Schneider worked with colleagues Nathan Havey here in town to have our university co-host Denver Good Business Week. And really this was, we got our day, Regis University got its day to host a series of speakers, including Abby, that'll give her talk here in a little bit, or a brief version of it. And I was asked to introduce the day and introduce the speakers. And really I'm gonna share what I did to make that introduction, because it really calls out some intersections of the work that we're doing. Okay, so you'll excuse kind of the speech-like nature of what I'm about to say, because I'm going to give you a little bit of the verbatim here. So good morning, everyone. My name is Dr. Ken Sagendorf. I'm the founding director of the Innovation Center and the director of our MBA in the Anderson College of Business and Computing here at Regis University. On behalf of my colleagues and my dean, welcome to Regis University, one of the 27 Jesuit institutions in the US and one of more than 800 in the world. The Jesuits started their first school a long time ago in 1548 to shape good business. It really was at the core. They were bringing values-based education to the sons of those in commerce who, quote unquote, already knew business. So the Jesuits were at the heart of that addition. Everything we do here at Regis University is based upon our mission to develop a more just and humane world. And born of these roots is our business school, the Anderson College of Business and Computing. And our business school is designed and meant to operate at the intersection of our accrediting body, AACSB, the global accrediting body of business schools, as well as the inspirational paradigm for Jesuit business education. Our accreditation organization calls for each of us to be driven by our own and our students' societal impact, to be and to help businesses become organizations that perform successfully, ethically, and sustainably in order to contribute to the well-being of the communities and the stakeholders they serve. The inspirational paradigm for Jesuit business education guides us as well, stating, quote, "A Jesuit education in business is firmly based upon an ethical framework that emphasizes the fundamental questions of the dignity and potential of the individual, the centrality of the common good, and the importance of social networks that affirm and support human flourishing." Each academic field, marketing, finance, accounting, management, human resources, etc., acknowledges that the present approach to business education, and just a reminder, this is still in the quote, with its emphasis on profit motive and neglect of social good, contributes to an unsustainable economy that does not support human flourishing. Each academic field should then offer an alternative vision based on ethical principles and the promotion of virtue. What is best for all and for the planet, we ask. It is the responsibility of each faculty member, department, and school to articulate their position vis-a-vis the Ignatian paradigm, end quote. At this intersection, operate our Innovation Center, our Seed Institute that Dr. Schneider is taking over, and our Common Good Network. Please take a look at our website to learn more. And I don't want to take any more time from the amazing speakers we have today. Thank you to everyone here today and online for Denver Good Business Week. This is important work. And thanks to everybody for the vision and bringing this to fruition across our city and across our global movement. And that's it.
Wow. Can I comment?
Sure.
I think we want to share that exact quotation about your commitment, about the school's commitment at Regis. I think we want to share it at Regis so that people start getting what they're committed to, which will be quite an adventure. I love it. But with all the Jesuit business schools, and maybe there's something for the Journal of Management for Global Sustainability that would fit with an upcoming editorial, which we might get out real soon, and maybe an article on that. And let's see who else has a statement as clear and bold as that. I mean, you're right on. Does it sound to you all like it is to me? That it's, boy, you're out of the closet,
Yes,
baby.
great.
You're gonna do something.
Now you understand that after I heard Ken say that during the Good Business Week meeting, I thought he should share it with our global movement group. But also, Ken, you know, we know Professor Stoner is always encouraging in helping people get the word out and get published. And I don't know if we're asking for a big hurdle here, but taking your introduction and then turning it into an article would be awesome.
Yeah, it's you can simply be, this is what Regis is doing.
Well, and I think
But by the way, I have to admit that I suspect that that statement was written by 3 people, and 1,000 people are going to say, "Holy cow, is that what we're committed to?"
I wanted to especially point out the intersectionality, right? I mean, the Jesuit paradigm, the paradigm for inspirational Jesuit business education is not standing on its own. It is, AACSB is right there alongside it with the societal impact statement, which is new for many of our business schools in the most current criteria for accreditation. But it's also in our roots and in our DNA. I mean, we were there to add the "and" to commerce at the very beginning of Jesuit education. And so I think it's a little bit of a revisiting our history and revisiting our intentionality.
Well, the beauty of the Jesuit business school situation is that all we're asking people to do is walk their talk. Their talk has always been this, but now it's even more concrete and specific than it ever was before because of the new paradigm and because of the seriousness of sustainability and everything. But it's deep in your values from the very beginning. And so let's just do what we're talking about.
Agreed.
Thank you. That's really great, Ken.
Thanks.
Ken, I'm going to do what I said I was going to do previously, which is, how the heck did you come to articulate that? Where does this story begin that because you hit it spot on?
Well, this is, so I've long worked with college professors, and it's been, I don't know, it's almost a quarter century now, with the intent to make them better teachers. That was always, I always took education as a little bit of a justice issue. I think often we're missing our students and meeting them where they are and really being able to change their lives as much as we promise. And so really living up to that potential and inclusivity of our promise to society, which is to educate the citizenry. So that's been my life's work. It was, and in that life's work, I use a friend of mine's quote where he was researching what the best college teachers do. If any of you have ever read the book by Ken Bain titled "What the Best College Teachers Do," he's a historian by training, and it really is longitudinal research that captures the work of 64 faculty, I believe, in his book. And really what he points out as he's looking at the work of these faculty is that the best teachers set up for their students something called an expectation failure. When the students expect something will happen and it doesn't happen exactly the way they thought, that is the place that is most ripe for learning. And when we started our business school here, and I was fortunate enough to be on the strategic planning committee behind the starting of that business school, which was really a major merger in our institution between 3 separate units that we brought together. I'm not sure we've ever really fully merged it together as well as we might have, but really our founding dean brought to us an expectation failure moment. And that was in his presentation about what the college could be. And he still is using these exact phrases and words as he's moved on to a different business school in the country. But that was that every business school is focused on developing leaders. And at that time in 2015, in the previous 10 years, there were over 360,000 books and articles written with leader or leadership in the title. And his argument was, if we are so prolific and start to understand leadership in such a good way, why is the planet warming? Why is there so much political strife? Why are so many people starving? And perhaps leadership wasn't what we needed to be focused on. And he gave us that contrast of stewardship, which is inclusive of leadership, but still a contrast nonetheless. And James, you asked, how did I get into this work? It was that moment of expectation failure when I said, oh, our business education can be so much more than getting people jobs.
Yeah.
And we can really do work that is boundless, that is beyond the walls of the institution. And this is what all of our that's what the inspirational paradigm is asking us to do. That's what AACSB is asking us to do, is stop looking inside the institution and look beyond the walls of our institution. And I call this a wall-less university, where there are no boundaries. Despite the fact that we erect fences around our physical spaces, the reality is it was an invitation to think beyond the walls of the institution. So it was that, and a subtle invitation to come into business education that brought me in. And I would be my guest, the newbie in business education on the call. But the reality is I went all in when I was invited. So Global Movement was an extension of that stewardship vision to an even broader audience. And that's why I'm here.
Thank you very much. Let's open it up for a little bit of comments. Anybody want to kick that off? Linda? I put you, well, let me on, yep, good.
There you go. Sorry that my connection was variable there for a minute and I missed some things, but what I was knowing Ken's work with entrepreneurship and so on, and I apologize if some of what I missed when I was disconnected, this is redundant, but I was kind of thinking about how entrepreneurship, thinking of the students that we've dealt with, thinking of trends in business that we see, especially during and post-pandemic, where people are realizing that what they thought they were going to do in business may need to change, and they have different ideas about what they want to accomplish. And when I started thinking about all those things, the way I distilled it was, we in Global Movement are trying to change what we teach and how we inspire people about participating in business. To me, entrepreneurship is perhaps, this is more a question and for comment, but entrepreneurship seems to me to be the huge door. I mean, if doors to business education are on scale of what we might relate to in our house, I see entrepreneurship as the sliding window, the sliding glass door that's like 10 feet wide, because I think that people who are entrepreneurs are already in a mindset of trying to change the way business is done, right? They want to do it their way. They want to bring their values to the way they operate in business. So people who are, and the good news, bad news is that many people who are entrepreneurs are not necessarily invested in an MBA program or a major curriculum program. On the other hand, many of our universities have ways of reaching these entrepreneurs, whether they're certificate programs or different kinds of programs or other kinds of outreach. So Ken, I just wanted to throw that back to you. Those are ideas I had kicking around, but it seems to me that if Global Movement and our curriculum people can do something to boost the energy and excitement that entrepreneurs bring to business, that it might be a way of, to use Professor Stoner's ideas of fast prototyping, right? That entrepreneurs and fast business revolutionary prototyping might kind of come together. So I just throw that out for your thoughts.
Yeah, so many thoughts are stirring at this moment right now. But Linda, I haven't seen the numbers in a couple of weeks, but the employment numbers are coming out, and 4 million people a month are leaving their job during this U.S. Great Resignation. I've heard it called the Great Quit. And we know since COVID started, 1.1 million more businesses have been started than are started in a non-COVID year.
Wow.
So since April, I forget what the number is, but 4 million a month, 10 months, we're approaching 30, 40 million people have quit their jobs. instead of 3.4, 3.3 million businesses being started in a given year, we're seeing 4.4, 4.5 million businesses started. So I think your comment's very astute. There's something about the current business world and working within it and the draw of doing something on your own. And I think, as you explore all that is behind the Great Resignation, there's a lot being written right now about this being kind of a pent up thing where the conditions were just ripe for it to actually happen. So what we know is that there's some level of personal disappointment in the current business world. Not everywhere, but with lots of people, there's some pent up current disappointment. And that current disappointment is, I don't know what the value of my work is within the business and as the business in society. I'm questioning myself and my integrity. And so it's become a very personal thing all of a sudden. So you mentioned this question about entrepreneurship, and is this a potential door to open? Yes, with conditions. So, and the conditions are, we have to talk about business in a different way than the rapid rise Silicon Valley, make as much money with as fast a burn rate as possible and get out. We have to undermine, undercut, and upend that model. And I've asked these questions. I've had so many high-powered people where I'm plugging into their Zoom meetings we've had here for the last 18 months. And I remember somebody from the Aspen Institute, the dean at Yale School of Business, and I'm asking them questions that, in programs like the MBA, we are preparing them to go to work in corporate mega companies. That is our goal, that is our design, and that is our intention. But yet we know that the largest driver in the American economic system, and I would bet around the planet, is small and medium-sized businesses. They employ the most people in our economic models, and they make up the majority of that economy. And so the simple question of what prevents us from preparing people for small and medium-sized businesses? And I think that's the frontier we have yet to crack. I mean, we really are trying to do that at Regis. But I have to tell you, I sit in front of my donors and my board members and my administration, and I try to explain this over and over and over, why we're not trying to create Silicon Valley startups, but we're trying to create sustainable businesses that anchor their communities. Right? I mean, that's that human flourishing. How do we get people to create jobs, hire people, give them living wages that increase over time? And how do we create business models like that? It's not as simple as teaching them P&L. It's you have to give them a different perspective and approach and permission. And I think that last part is that you have to give them permission that it's okay to start a smaller, medium-sized businesses. And I can show them numbers, right? I mean, somebody that employs 20 people can be a 10, 20, $50 million annual business. And we don't often open the doors and show them those things in our business schools, because our case studies are all around billion-dollar unicorns. And we're enamored with the Elon Musks of the world. And we have to, I think that's the part of the fight, right? That's the part of the activists in me, for sure, is to show them that there's different potential.
Ken, I love what you said earlier when you were talking about stewardship. And I think, maybe I'm wrong in this, but when most people hear the word stewardship, they really don't think in terms of business. They just think in terms of stewardship as in, I am a human being and the environment that I live in and around should remain fertile and healthy. But even if you're reductivist and you take stewardship as only to mean within the business community, could you speak a little bit to that? Because I think that is also of value.
Yeah, I'm trying right now, and you'll give me just a minute to see if I can publicly type, even though I'm at my own computer on Zoom. Was trying to
While you're
figure out-
looking, can I just go ahead and look, Ken, and I'll just jump in a second, because this is something that Ken and I both worked on, and that is the entrepreneurial innovation class. There's one of the first exercises, again, bringing this back to the global movement group of people who want to look at changing their curriculum. In that course, we have some readings about values in business and terms, right? Terminology that is often used, because it's not ethics, it's a bigger, more global thing that's tied to the Jesuit values. And so we use some of the terms in this reading, and we ask the students to then write about how they would take that concept, stewardship and others, and how they would apply that in their own business. Ken, you can probably relate to the example that I'm talking about here. And so, James, that gets back to, do we need to preach? Not necessarily. In other words, we don't have to have the answer about what stewardship means in business, but what I found very revealing in the courses that we taught, by asking that question, it helps the students who are there, because the course is called Entrepreneurial Innovation and they have this dream. It allows them to reflect on what they think about how they're going to apply stewardship and values and all kinds of fun things. So, Ken, now I'm sure you found what you were looking for.
I did. I put it in the chat and I'll come back to visit it, but I want to pick up what you just laid down there, Linda, because I'm teaching that class now. Well, it just ended. And, this is one of my favorite parts, is after they submit that final paper that is the kind of the reflective work about the business that they've tried to start in these last 8 weeks. They go back to revisit that stewardship paper that they wrote in week 1 to talk about the parts that they thought they knew that are honestly way more difficult than they had expected, and revisit what they might change about that. So, I think, James, one part of your question is, we introduce the idea and let them pick it up where they are. And then we have to move into and how does it work? And so really, Mike, the way that I teach the class sets up that expectation failure, as I'm dealing with the groups imploding this morning, they revisit those stewardship principles, because that ability that they said in week 1, that of course I can focus on other people and their wants and their needs, and yet in a group of 3, they can't work together. Right. And so, this is that how-to where we're bringing that back and showcasing where the work must be done. And it really frustrates them. And my evaluations are nothing to write home about. Abby can attest to that. But I think they're exactly where they're supposed to be, because the students are invited into a struggle to understand the how of implementation of stewardship is way different than the what stewardship is. And so you have to invite them into that. And to your earlier question, Linda, entrepreneurship, I think, is such an easy example. Instead of waiting and listening to all of the stuff that we teach them in a business education and then going out to see how it works, is because it gives them some of the how in the moment. And I think it's the how that is the necessary ingredient to make some of this work. And you can do it with projects, but you have to figure out how to do enough projects, enough experiences, so the gaps close in the time between, so they don't forget. Like any of our personal development is required. So real quickly before Abby goes, we put the college worked, and we worked as an entire faculty in a guided conversation to explore what stewardship meant to us. And I'll be frank, it didn't mean the same thing to all of us. So the ability for us working over Abby, Linda, what was it, 8-9 months, to try and distill down when we said stewardship, really where we were trying to focus. And you'll see in the chat there that sustainability defines life as all creatures and the environment. So this wasn't just for human beings. That it calls each of us to work together on solutions to society's complex problems. So it sets a stage for the directionality of those larger items rather than the tyranny of the urgent that's right in front of us. It focuses on the long-term impacts of our decisions. So instead, I mean, that's the anti-Silicon Valley quick investment, quick profit making. It is in the long term, how do we pay attention to all of those stakeholders and figure out, are we, excuse the language, but are we raping and pillaging the planet and people along the way to a short-term profit, or can we do it differently? It requires this personal responsibility in understanding the systemic effects of one's actions. So how can you watch the ripple and understand that you, whether you like to be or not, are part of a larger system? And then this idea of inclusivity and requires us to be other focused. Those were the 5 kind of conversation cornerstones that we got to in our stewardship conversation.
Ken, I can't thank you enough.
If anybody's
You're an amazing inspirational speaker. I don't know if you know that.
If anybody's wondering why I'm laughing, we're right exactly on schedule after the 5 minutes from Ken's 12:15 talk to Abby's 12:35 talk, 5-minute talk, that we're right on schedule. And I know James is laughing also. So thanks, Ken. And James, you're about to take us off to Abby, I think.
I am. I really wanted to bring you into the conversation, Abby, because I feel like you have a specific focus on it that really is relevant. So why don't you dive right in?
Well, thank you so much for having me. As Ken mentioned, this presentation is a much abbreviated version of a longer talk that I gave at Denver Good Business Week at the end of October. And the presentation is based on a paper that Linda Irwin and I wrote. Really, Linda pulled the weight and I was a groupie, but very honored to be working on that with her and honored that she asked me to give this presentation today. So I'm going to actually put the link to the full paper into the chat in case anyone's interested in visiting that. Although I'm sure Linda has shared it before, and I will go ahead and share my screen. All right. Can everyone see that okay?
Absolutely.
Yep.
Perfect. All right. So I wanted to start with a little exercise, and hopefully this will work out. But if you could all pull up the chat, I'd like you to type in the word or 3 words, just something that comes to mind when you first hear of marketing, but don't press enter yet. So just type it in and be ready to press enter, but in about 30 seconds, I'll ask everyone to press enter at the exact same time, and we'll have kind of a waterfall of everybody's responses. So take just about 20 seconds at this point, whatever first comes to mind when you hear the word marketing. You can type it in, but just don't press enter yet.
Okay, I have to leave now,
Bye.
and I can't figure out how to turn off track changes. I
I'm
can't
sorry
like
about
this.
that.
So please turn off track changes.
All right.
So if everyone has their words typed in, on the count of 3, you can all go ahead and hit enter. 1, 2, 3. All right, so Linda had advanced access to the answer, creating value, but perfect. Ariane, sales, advertisement, selling, yeah, James, selling used car salesman, totally swaying opinion. And Jim, selling stuff to us that we do not need. Perfect. So everyone played along. I think these are often the things that people think about when they hear the word marketing. It's about selling us things that we don't need, creating needs that we don't actually have. And a lot of times people equate marketing with advertising, and specifically bad advertising. So gratuitous sex appeals that cause body image issues in women and girls, the inappropriate appropriation of social movements to try to sell things, and just the general ad clutter that we see. And this is really problematic. For one, because of what it's representing, but also because marketing is actually so much more. Typically, the way that marketers define marketing is in terms of what we call the marketing mix, or the 4 Ps. So the 4 Ps are product, price, promotion, and place. So what are these things actually referring to? Well, product can refer to a tangible good. It could also refer to an intangible service or ideas, places, people's identities. And it also includes the attributes and functionality that that product has beyond the actual product, good or service. It also includes issues like branding, packaging, which obviously has a lot of sustainability issues, and labeling. In terms of place, this is really referring to the supply chain or channel of distribution. And it includes things like logistics, inventory, and this is really where you see a lot of ethical and environmental issues coming up in terms of how raw materials are sourced, how they're getting to manufacturers, the manufacturing process itself, who's involved in that labor, how much they're getting paid, the logistics of then distributing those goods and services to the end consumer, and the environmental and ethical impacts of all of those things. In terms of pricing, this refers to the list price. So how much does it look like something costs to us as the consumer? What is the cost to the producer to produce this? How do we estimate demand? Different things like that. And then promotion is where advertising comes in. So advertising is just one part of promotion, which is just one part of marketing. Promotion also includes things like public relations, personal selling, sales promotion, now largely things like social media. And so really you can see that marketing includes all of these things. It's a very broad discipline. And really the key here to this model is you see that product is highlighted. And typically that's how marketing is actually performed in practice, is that we start with the product. So what does the firm want to produce? What is the firm good at producing? And oftentimes this is referred to as the Fordist model, because there's an anecdote that back in the day, people could buy a Model T in any color that they wanted, as long as that color was black. So it was completely about the producer, what they were doing, with a complete disregard for what customers actually wanted. And this model doesn't work. How many Model T Fords do you see driving around these days? So then marketers got a little bit smarter and they thought, okay, we need to actually focus on the customer, or what marketers typically refer to as the target market. So how do we find this group of people that now we can develop a marketing mix around them? So how do we understand what their needs and wants are, create a product for that, and then determine distribution, put a price on it, and then develop promotion strategies. But this is problematic for a few reasons. One, it's viewing customers as a target. It's still pushing products onto those consumers. And I'm sure Linda has talked to you about the problematic nature of doing that. But the other issue is what happens when you base an entire system around people's wants and needs, when human desires are incompatible with the finite nature of resources on the planet. This does not end well for society and the planet. So Linda and I decided to develop a different model of marketing that actually creates sustained value, not only for the firm, not only for customers, but also for society and for the planet. So I put up a picture of the old model so that you can still see how this is centered again around the target market, developing the marketing mix around that. And then on the right, you can see the new model that Linda and I developed. And the big thing here is that we start with a need. So an actual need, not just customers' desires. And the need could be a human need. It could be an environmental need. And then we look for the people who share that need and develop a strategy around that. And when we think about strategy, a lot of times we think about the various strategic models. But this strategy is really based more on resiliency, on systems thinking, on long-term thinking. What would happen if businesses started to take climate change into account as one of the risks that's built into how they're developing their strategy? And then we can build the marketing mix around that. So instead of looking at a product specifically, we're looking for a solution to the need that we've identified. And that solution might be that we actually have to reduce consumption. So Philip Kotler in 2011 came up with a concept called demarketing. So how do we actually get people to consume less? How do we reduce the amount of material goods that are being used? How do we reduce packaging? How do we focus more on services than goods, but also reduce energy intensive services? How do we reuse? So cradle to cradle, circular economy, looking at things like that. Repairing, so Patagonia is a great example of a company that's interested in repairing rather than just selling you a new jacket. And then we can look at recycling. So a lot of times sustainability initiatives start with recycling, but we should actually be looking at reducing first, then reusing, and then recycling. And there are other concepts involved in looking at this product solution as well. Looking at pricing, what if we had a pricing model that wasn't just about profit maximization? What if we looked at ideas like employee and customer ownership, things like co-ops, rather than just shareholder ownership? What if we engaged in full cost accounting? So instead of saying, oh, this is an externality, we're not going to deal with this, this is outside of our model. What if the cost of a hamburger actually reflected the environmental cost of producing that hamburger? What if buying a pair of jeans reflected the actual cost of people producing those jeans? And so the prices that we as consumers would pay would look a lot different, and we'd have, our income would go a lot less far in terms of the amount of things that we would be buying, and the price would reflect the actual human and environmental cost of producing and selling these products. The price could also be barriers to more sustainable behavior. So again, if we're looking at marketing not just as selling things, but as a toolbox for creating behavior change, part of that cost is getting people to give up their old behaviors. So how do we do that? Looking at place, so supply chain transparency. If people had to report on who is in their supply chain, what is the carbon footprint of this behavior? Reducing the environmental impact and going beyond zero. Paying fair and equitable wages, obviously no child labor, creating safe working conditions. And again, how are the costs of these things built into the price of the product? And then finally, in terms of promotion, how can we reduce waste? So right now, there's often just a blast of advertising or a blast of promotion of these messages where it's reaching people who don't need to hear this. And it's just bombarding them with more ad clutter. So how can we more specifically micro-target the people who need to hear these messages and reduce the colonization of physical and mental space with consumption messages? I've been toying with the idea about what does nature communicate? When you have an open space, it's not empty, it's open, but not empty. And so what does that space tell us? How can nature also give us a message about what's important instead of just having human created messages about consumption? And when we do have those product messages, how do we communicate with customers in ways that honor their dignity and actually add value to that relationship? And so what's important is that this was not just some pie in the sky dream that Linda and I had developed. It was maybe a bit of dreaming, but a lot of these things are actually being put into practice. So I wanted to share a couple quick examples before I conclude. So you may recognize this gadget. This is Google Glass, which failed splendidly when it first came out. Customers weren't interested in it. They didn't see the value. They didn't have a need for it. It was kind of just a pet project of Google CEO Sergey Brin. And it didn't fill an actual need. And so it failed. More recently, there's now Google Glass kind of 2.0, where it's helping manufacturers and factory workers, giving them actual instructions for what they're building in a hands-free way. So instead of just being some kind of cool, shiny new gadget, now it's fulfilling an actual need that's saving time, it's saving money, and it's keeping these workers safe, because instead of having to look at directions while they're working, they essentially have this vision in front of their eye, giving them the instructions, kind of coaching them through the project. In terms of product design, there are a lot of great examples, but one that actually goes back decades is Xerox, where they were making their copiers out of recyclable parts. And what's really cool is there are now models where instead of owning products, companies are leasing them. And so now the manufacturer is responsible for that product throughout its life cycle. They're not just creating it and then handing it off to the consumer or the business consumer. So they're more motivated to create things that are lasting longer, that don't need to be repaired as much. And when the customer then returns it, now they can actually recycle it. It doesn't do any good to create a product that can be recycled if the end consumer is not actually recycling it. But when it's being leased and the consumer can bring it back to the manufacturer can ensure that those parts are recycled. Another product issue that I had mentioned is packaging. So this example is taken just from down the road in Denver. There's a store called Joyfill that sells cleaning products and personal hygiene products. And instead of selling them in single-use plastic, they have it in bulk, and then you can bring in a glass mason jar or ball jar and then fill that up so that it's reusable. You're not bringing home plastic packaging that you're just going to throw away again. So really innovative model in terms of how to basically eliminate packaging, or at least reduce it. Celestial Seasonings, another great Colorado company out of Boulder, Colorado. Their product is also sustainable. Their packaging is very sustainable, but their supply chain is really impressive. They actually have relationships with these farmers who have been working with them for 40 years. They know how the herbs and the tea that they're using in their products is being grown. They know the people who are growing this, and they've built those relationships. So really ensuring ethical production, and then also the ethical treatment of these farmers. And there are a number of examples like this. And then in terms of pricing, so again, looking at that full cost accounting. So I love the 7th generation example. So a lot of times people just assume, well, the sustainable product has to be more expensive. That's just how it is. But it turns out that cutting down a virgin forest and using that in your paper products is less expensive than using recycled paper in those products. And that's why it's more expensive for the consumer. So how on earth is it less expensive to cut down a forest than to use recycled paper? And so how do we change the pricing structure? How do we change the structure of subsidies so that the environmental cost is actually taken into account, and so that the true cost is reflected in that price, to the point that cutting down a virgin forest is more expensive than using recycled products, given what is the value of having those trees. And so ecological economists can help us to put a value on those trees and take that into account in our pricing. Patagonia is another great company. So they have, in the past, they've had a program where they were looking for a call for proposals, and if their suppliers included the cost of childcare in the proposal and it was more expensive, they actually encouraged that. So they were willing to pay more for their supplies, knowing that the suppliers were providing childcare for their workers, or at least supporting that. And so looking for companies to not just look for what's cheapest, but how do we encourage suppliers that are actually doing right by their employees? And is that reflected in a price that we're willing to pay? And then finally, in terms of promotion, 7th generation, again, is a great example. They actually used their whole advertising budget at one point on an education program for children. And so instead of just putting more ad clutter out there, trying to get people just to buy their product. They actually created value in their communities and helped children to learn about sustainability and the value of the environment, and really honored their customers. Of course, it's obviously still promoting the company, but it's doing so in a way that actually is creating value in their community, and is going beyond just messaging that's cluttering. So I want to end the talk the way I ended it for Denver Good Business Week, which is honoring my friend and mentor, the late Dr. Mark Meany. He was the director of the Center for Ethics and Social Responsibility, formerly Center for Education on Social Responsibility, at the University of Colorado Boulder. That's where I got my PhD, and meeting Mark and working with Caesar really helped to inspire a lot of the work that I've been doing, and tying ethics and sustainability into marketing in a really fundamental way. It's not just about having a token lesson on CSR or using a few token examples, but really changing the narrative about what marketing is, so that when we talk about sustainable marketing, that's not an alternative to traditional marketing, but that sustainable marketing is mainstream marketing. And so I really appreciate his mentorship and hope to continue this work going forward. So thank you all so much for listening and for having me. And hopefully this has at least shifted in a little bit the way that you think about marketing, and that maybe marketing is evil in some ways, but can also really be used for good. So thank you. And I'll stop sharing my screen.
Abby, so we just have a couple more minutes left, and I want to keep you on schedule. I know you have a tight schedule. I absolutely appreciate your taking the time to share this. It really, it's very inspiring to see the work you do. It really is.
Thank you.
I think really I just want to go around the room and thank everybody. We have just a couple of minutes left. Any last comments around the room?
Well, I love what Abby and Linda are doing. I think it's just great, and look forward to continuing to learn more about it and publishing more and more about it, actually. Thank you.
Thank you.
Ariane, any thoughts?
That was great. The shift from what we traditionally think of as marketing to where the need is, and bringing a strategy and putting people together around it. And the examples you gave were great with Patagonia and Seventh Generation and Celestial Seasonings. I mean, just being close to the suppliers and being close to people you do business with, and understand how they do business as well as how you're doing your business. Yeah, thank you.
Linda?
Well, the Global Movement team has recently started a conversation about, ripped from the headlines, that we've heard about the supply chain crisis. And I asked the question of the connection between the supply chain crisis and the demand crisis, if you will. And I think what Abby presented sort of brings those ideas together. And not that we have the total solution, but it emphasizes that, like many of the things we see in business, you change one dynamic and it impacts the other, or you know, some of the laws of physics, right? And we don't often do that. We don't look at the impact of changing one item on all the others in a system. And so again, what Abby shared with us with the systems idea is, first of all, let's look at a new definition of what marketing is, because product pushing for profit is not sustainable. So if we're going to have sustainable marketing, then we've got to redefine what that means, and businesses need to know that. So I think there's a lot of different ways we can go with this. And I think that that the conversation, thanks to Global Movement, is going to continue.
Thank you to everyone. I want to honor Abby's hard stop. So thank you to everyone, and I'll send the recording out as soon as I can. Abby, I'd also like to cut out your piece and have it posted separately. Is that something you're okay with?
Absolutely. The article that Linda and I wrote?
Yeah, but also this recording today.
Oh, sure.
That would be
Absolutely.
because it was really a great recording. Thank you
Oh,
to
well,
everybody.
Thank you. Thank you so much for having me. Good
Have
to
a good
see you
one.
again.
Bye.
Bye.
Thank you. Bye.
Hey, dude.
Hey, how are you, Jay?
Good.